I'm Wendy Capewell, an experienced counsellor and psychotherapist. I work with so many people who feel that they're the only ones struggling with the issues that they share with me. Possibly, like many of you, they feel so alone. And so the aim of this podcast is to talk to guests who have their own stories to share, their experience of the struggles that they've been through, or maybe they're continuing to live with, offering their insights as well as their inspiring journey. So let me introduce my guest.
I've got Kari O'Driscoll with me, and she, bless her, for me it's 2 in the afternoon, but for her it's 7 in the morning. And the time difference, like from the States to the UK, we were just talking about that, and daylight saving and all kinds of things like that. So thank you very much, Kari, for getting up and doing this first thing in the morning. So Kari is, she's a related parenting coach, and I'm going to hand over because I think she is going to introduce herself much better. I know she's just released a new book. So please, Kari, can I hand over to you so that you can introduce yourself so much better and so more eloquently than I can?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm still on my first cup of coffee, so we'll see how well I do. But I am a writer and a parenting coach. My most recent book came out about a month ago, and it's called Happy, Healthy Teens: Why Focusing on Relationship Works. And it's really for parents and educators of teens. And there's lots of really great exercises and activities in there, and ways that parents and educators can kind of start to wrap their head around how can we focus on building relationship with teens, and why is that important? I am also the parent of a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old. And I am the founder of an organization called the Self Project, which is designed to work with teens and educators and parents around relationship and building strong connections.
I think that is such important work, because I've been a teen myself. I remember what that was like. Mm-hmm. Still, I have 2 daughters, and I have 2 teenage granddaughters. So there is 3 generations of experiences of teens, including my own. So yeah, it's a tricky time, isn't it?
It is. It's a really difficult time. And I think even if we've experienced it, we don't always necessarily understand why it's so tricky. But, looking at what's happening in the teenage brain and what's happening in their body, and then the kind of social development that they're going through, when we understand all of that complexity and then look at the context in which they're living, I think it's amazing it's not messier, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's a tricky time all round, isn't it? And as you say, it's not just hormones. There's a lot more involved. And I think the more we understand it, hopefully the more bearable it gets. I can't say that it's going to be necessarily always enjoyable, because it's that transitioning of them and us as parents trying to understand it and negotiate it. And the other thing that we're going to throw in the mix is there is a likelihood that mom is going to be going through the perimenopause as well. I always said to my husband at that time, I think, I really don't envy you when the girls get to teenage and I'm going through the menopause. Life is going to be unbearable for you. So there's a lot in there, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. And that's why I think if we can really bring things down to the level of focusing on what's our connection, if I can see you as a unique human being whose needs and desires are just as important as my own, then we can sort of start from that platform instead of doing this sort of whack-a-mole with we're going to fight about curfew. We're going to fight about phones at the dinner table. We're going to fight about driving. We're going to fight about academics. We're going to, fight about that relationship you want to have with that boy or girl that you're, but if we can just sort of simplify it down to that level of, we want to be in relationship with each other and we're going to navigate from that space, then it doesn't make those things less complicated, but it makes those things less emotionally fraught, I think.
So are you saying it's about having more knowledge and more understanding as a parent?
I mean, I think that's part of it. I think it's really important for parents to know what's happening with their teens, like what is happening in that sort of brain development, right? What are they? Because I think a lot of times we expect things from teens that they're not actually capable of yet. There's a certain level of critical thinking that they have to develop. It's like you have to crawl before you can walk kind of thing, right? And I think a lot of times because they look like little adults and they demand to be treated like little adults, we expect them to act like little adults, but they're not ready yet. They're not there yet. So I think that it's important for parents to understand that, but I think it's also important for parents to understand the role of power and how power actually destroys relationships. And so if we can remove the power and really get back to focusing on the care that I have for you as a human being, then we can start to cultivate that connection instead of destroying it. But, sometimes the consequences feel really, really huge. And so parents will revert back to that. Like, I have the power, this is my roof you're living under, you have to follow my rules. And that's not conducive to having a connection with your kid that feels trusting and loving.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, isn't it? Because teens have got a very different kind of viewpoint. They've got different agendas. They can't, as you say, that then haven't emotionally or even physically, they haven't got that experience. So for them, it's a tricky one. But they're kind of, they don't care whether their room is full of crockery that's full of mold and stuff, which will drive mom and dad absolutely bonkers because they can't even enter the room without it, taking a deep breath. Yeah. And I think that's a tricky one, because I remember with my girls, I always say, okay, your room is your own territory, as long as it doesn't eke out into the rest of the house. Let's have that agreement. I just go in there once in a while because I just said, I'd like to know whether we could recognize if we've had burglars or not. I'd like to see the carpet still there, but generally I always felt that was their territory. And I know a lot of parents find that a tricky one because they say, it's my house, you're living under it, la, la, la. And they expect that for their teens, but that's a tough one because surely aren't they allowed to have their own space?
Well, I think it's important for us to remember that, what our kids are learning about power and power structures, right? If we parent in that way where everything is mine, I get to make all the rules, you're just living here for a while, that what kids learn is that the person with the most power always wins, right? And so then when they go out into the world on their own, they're either looking to be the person with the most power, or they're looking for someone who has power to sort of take them under their wing and guide them and tell them how to live life. And that, I don't think either one of those scenarios is particularly great. But if we do like what you did, where we learn how to share power with our kids and we say, okay, you get to be in control of this thing, and I'm going to relinquish control, even if it drives me a little bit crazy, right? Like I said the same thing to my kids, except I said, I'm going to draw the line if we start to get ants or rats because you've left so much food in your room, then we're going to have a conversation. Or if nobody can find a clean bowl, and then we know there are 10 of them stacked up in your bedroom, right? Like there are a couple of deal breakers there. But if we start to share power with our kids, then that does two things. Number one, it reminds them that we see them as important, discrete human beings whose needs and desires are just as important as our own. And it gives them practice, right? It gives them practice playing with power, like what works for me, what doesn't. My oldest I said, hands off your bedroom. And I can remember thinking, when she goes off to college and has a roommate, it's going to be really, really awful because she's a disaster and nobody's going to want to live with her. But you know what? She figured it out. And now she's a complete neat freak. She's 22 years old. And she complains to me about her roommate being so dirty and messy. But it didn't ruin our relationship. And she figured it out on her own. Right. And so there are so many different ways where we can start to share power with our teens over time. And then it gives them this idea of like, oh, we're in collaboration. There's a partnership here. It's okay. This is what a healthy relationship looks like. Instead of going out into the world and thinking that a normal relationship is one person having all the power and the other person just succumbing to that.
I think the tricky bit is that, yes, of course, we've had to guide and support them. We've let go gradually. I always said I let go from the time I found myself letting go of them quite early on when they went to kind of nursery, because up until that point, I knew everything about them. I knew every single nuance, every word, every step, anything, their thoughts on it. And then you notice that you're being shut out and they're moving away more and more as they get older. So there is that feeling of, well, I've got to be there as a parent, but I've also got to allow them to develop as an adult. And then we get that real kind of difficulty, I notice, is I'm an adult and I can do it all. And in the next breath, oh, this is really scary and I'm just a little girl. And I think that is a tricky one for both, I think, parent and child.
Yeah.
Because the parent's going, well, I thought you said you're an adult. No, mommy, I need you. Or daddy, no, please do it for me. And the parent doesn't understand that their child is testing the water, even though they could be really bullshit and go, yeah, I can do it. Don't tell me. Oh. And then they, well, hold on a minute. Thought you said you could do this. And I think that's another big one I think I hit.
It is. And I think that's the beauty of building relationships with our kids, is because if we can teach them during those times that, like, I'm here, you let me know what you need from me to support you, right? If you're feeling super confident about this, then I'm just going to stand over here on the sidelines and cheer you on and go, you go, girl, you got this, right? And if at some point you trip and fall and you need somebody to rush in and give you a hug and a big, oh, honey, I'm here, right? I can do that. Or if you need somebody to just kind of, help you limp to the finish line, I'm here for that too, right? So it's like letting our kids tell us, like, what is it that you need from me? And that sort of takes some of the trickiness out of it, is because, again, we're letting them have agency. We're letting them decide what is it that I need, but we're also teaching them that it's okay to ask for help when you start to feel overwhelmed with something. Because I think one thing that we do, and no shame, right? This is a cultural thing. So I don't shame parents for this, but because we've been taught to do this, is we talk about independence. You're going to be independent. You're going to be on your own someday. You're going to be, right. And that is a myth. That's an absolutely none of us is completely, fully independent, right? Somebody's growing my food right now. If my hot water heater exploded today and flooded the basement of my house, I'm not going to fix that by myself. I'm going to call somebody to come help me, right? If I get a flat tire on the side of the road, maybe I can change it myself, but maybe I can't. And so I think part of our job is to teach our teens how to be interdependent and how to discern who is safe to ask for help and who's the right person to ask in different situations. And then how do I get comfortable accepting help? Instead of just thinking that it's my job to become this super strong, independent person who does everything by themselves, because that's not reality. Nobody's like that. We all need a shoulder to cry on sometimes. We all need a friend that we can call and just say, I'm just going to rant for about 5 minutes, and I just need you to be a warm body listening on the other side, right?
Yeah. And I think that can be the generational thing, because we probably were taught we have to be independent, you don't ask for help, and therefore we don't ask for help, and therefore following on from that leads to, we teach our kids you can't ask for help, and that's, I think, for me, learning that it's okay to ask for help was a big thing. Still is on occasions. You know, my daughter, as I said, she's an adult, and for me to ask for help takes a lot of courage, even now. But she says, I'm so pleased when you do ask for help, Mom. But it is that thing, because we then have that generational thing. You can't ask for help. Maybe our parents weren't there for us, and we weren't approachable. So therefore, you have to be independent. That means that goes on to the next generation. So it's breaking that, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think if anybody needs any sort of additional reason to break that, what we've learned in the last 15 years or so of brain research is that human beings learn in the context of relationship.
Yeah.
We don't learn on our own as nearly as effectively or as efficiently. We learn in the context of relationship. And so if we're trying to, help our kids' brains develop, and we want them to develop those critical thinking skills and those executive functions, if we can act as sort of a mentor and walk them through, I'm going to help you connect the dots because you don't have the life experience to anticipate where things could go sideways here, right? So we can walk alongside each other, and I'm going to help you kind of connect those dots. And what happens is those neural pathways get strengthened so much faster because they see somebody doing it, someone that they trust, someone they feel safe with, someone who cares about them, someone who has their best interest at heart, right? And so they can relax and let down their guard. So their minds are fully open to absorbing that information. And then we're walking alongside them and connecting those dots, and those neural pathways are lighting up, and they're going, this is how this works. Okay, right? But when we parent with fear tactics or power, things like that, then their minds close down, right? Because they get that sort of fight, flight thing happening. And then their brains aren't able to really work on those executive functions very well. And they're not learning. So helping our kids figure out, when do I need help? When am I in over my head? When do I need to find that mentor person to kind of walk me through it? That's one of the biggest life skills we can give them, honestly.
Oh, I so agree, because I think I remember being brought up with that fear. Don't do that. You shouldn't do that. That's scary. No, that's not a good idea. And because that was their experience, my parents' experience, that instilled the fear of, you can't do this. It's too scary. So to try and do those things, you could go one of two ways. You can either go, stuff you, I'm going to do it anyway, but then you're really on your own because you don't have that support necessarily, or you just become so anxious you don't even try it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it is a skill that we have to learn as parents.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing. If we see, these children, they're just uncontrollable, they're hopeless, they're difficult, but it's helping the parents to help the teens, the adolescents. That is it, isn't it, really?
It is. It is. And I think, again, once we can relax into that space of, I want to be in relationship with you, then things become a little less fraught, right? We can figure this out together. This feels like a monumental issue. And if we can start from the foundation of, I want to be in relationship with you, and it's important to me to have this connection, then we can walk through that together instead of you're over here and I'm over here and we're trying to figure this out. And it's a huge power.
Yeah, it becomes a battleground, doesn't it? Which isn't healthy for anyone. No, I agree. Yeah, this has been just great, Kari. I've been so interesting, and I hope it helps a lot of parents and adolescents, because I think it is really useful stuff. I'm going to ask, what is one thing that maybe a parent could put into, or even a younger person, what could they take away from themselves, maybe put into action now, a starting point?
I think one of the most impactful things that we can do with teenagers is give them opportunities to teach us something. And it can be anything. It can be like explaining TikTok to me. I don't understand how this works. Or if maybe your child is really great at lacrosse, teach me how to throw the lacrosse ball. I don't understand that, right? But I think teens get told often, pretty much all day, every day, by all these different people where they're falling short and what they don't know yet. And it can be an amazing spark of connection for us to ask our child to just like, teach me something, and not in like a mocking way. Like, teach me about this video game that you're so obsessed with. Can we play it together? Can you teach me how to play it? Because when they get an opportunity to be the expert, that's huge. Then they realize you do actually see them as a human being, right? That is one of the most impactful things that I've seen happen with young people. Give them the chance to be the expert.
I can't second that enough. I mean, my one of my granddaughters, she is red hot at the board game Monopoly. And she wins every time. And she's so proud of that. And a few weeks ago, she came over with her boyfriend, and we were playing Scrabble. The fact that she could beat me at Scrabble, it's those kinds of things. And we have a great relationship, and it is, well, I'm not as good as you. That's fine. And I think when they see themselves holding that place, it really does help build relationships. So I just wanted to add my experiences recently, because they feel so much better. How do you do that? They really love that, because you say that they feel that they're valued.
Right. They do. And like I said, it doesn't have to be something huge, right? It can be just this quirky, small little thing, but it gives them the sense that we're interested in who they are as human beings, and that we see that they have mastered something, that they're really good at something. And that feels amazing. It feels amazing when someone recognizes that about you.
Yeah. Wow, I think a brilliant conversation today. Thank you, Kari, for being my guest. I'm going to put all your details in the show notes, but what's one easy way that people can get in touch with you?
I have a website for my parenting work. It's called the selfproject.com, SELF project. It's all one word. And you can go to that website, and there's contact information, and there are downloads available and all sorts of information there. So
fabulous. Thank you, Kari. Thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. This was a really great conversation. I appreciate it.
I hope you found this episode interesting as well as helpful. And you can find out more about my guest by going into the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about me, then go to my website, wendycapewell.co.uk. And there you can also book a call and find out how you can work with me. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Until next time, bye.